Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome this evening's guest moderator, Whitney Matheson from USA Today, and tonight's guest, Lake Bell.
Hi,
Hello.
guys.
Hey, guys. Turn your iPhones off. Wink, wink.
Thanks for coming out in the rain, and that goes
Yeah.
for you, too.
Thank you.
Well, I really loved your movie, and I mean that sincerely, not just because we're sitting here at the Apple Store. I loved it.
you.
It's great. How was it something? It's a very specific topic.
Yes.
Voiceovers. So, what led you to explore that particular
With the voiceover
topic?
industry?
Yes.
I was always really interested in voiceover and sort of the vocal mechanism as something to study and be interested in, mainly because it's such a, it's a part of how you represent yourself to the rest of the world. You know, you have two choices: to put yourself together a certain way and then also speak a certain way. And I guess I just got obsessive really early on, doing accents and dialects, as a kid. It was sort of a dinner party trick. My parents would sort of say, "Hey, Lake, do that thing, go entertain us, you child," And someone said, "Hey, you got a good ear, kid," and I just ran with that. But then it sort of evolved into a more sophisticated obsession at drama school in England, where you get to really study all the musculature that goes along with making sound. So it's got more specific. And then I went to LA and thought I was going to be a great voiceover artist, and then I realized it's impossible to just infiltrate someone's occupation. Just naively I went into that, and then realized that it was really cliquey. And also there was a hierarchy involved, and then a cacophony of characters that seemed ripe for comedy.
So, did you do any voiceover work before you started acting?
No, I aspired to. I did a lot of dialects and studied it quite a bit, but I had never really gotten jobs per se. So really, this is like a 93-minute audition for voiceover industry to say, "Hey, I've arrived. Give me a job."
So at what point did you think that your obsession might make a great screenplay?
I think I was just organically having a conversation with a friend shortly following a time when I would constantly be doing voiceovers for people doing things that are really benign, like in a world where one woman needs to go to the bathroom, it just just for friends, and they were like, enough already. And then I was like, isn't it weird that no woman has ever taken that authority and been the omniscient voice? That's strange, isn't it? Wouldn't it be funny to kind of have a character who fancies that, that's her one life's goal, is to say the words "in a world"? And is it a sexist industry? Is that a thing? Can I look into that? That's where I started.
Yeah.
And it is a thing. Without hyperbole, it is totally a thing. There's one. I would challenge anyone in this store to think about the last movie trailer they saw that had a woman VO it. There are none. There are literally none.
That's
There's one.
so strange.
Okay, fine. There's one.
There's one.
Melissa Disney did the Gone in 60 Seconds trailer. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it's a great trailer, and Melissa Disney kills it.
So how long did you work on the script? Was it years in the making?
The script, door to door, took about, I want to say 2 years of writing. And then, that's not intensive, not moving from the computer. That's, back and forth, living life and trying to work in other realms of my life. I was shooting How to Make It in America first season a lot during the writing of the script. So yeah, I'd say about 2 years.
And this movie is so well cast, and there's so many. It's just every person in it seems so well suited for the role. Did you write it with, Dimitri Martin is fantastic. Did you write it with him in mind, or did you cast much later?
I wrote with Michaela Watkins and Rob Corddry both in mind for those roles. But Dimitri Martin, I knew back in the day in New York. I knew him a little bit, and I hadn't thought of him initially, and then when someone brought him up, said, "Hey, what about Dimitri Martin?" I was like, "Yes, that is perfect." Awkward awesomeness.
Yeah. And so I guess we should look at a clip, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the movie. Go ahead. That's great. And that's another example, I think, of the great casting in this movie. He's so
Fred
perfect
Melamed.
and has just a voice that you remember when you hear
Fred
it.
Melamed has been a voiceover master for the last 20 years. So I didn't actually know that when I cast him. I just thought I knew his voice from A Serious Man. I don't know if you guys saw that movie, but he plays Cy Abelman in that, and he's remarkable in it. So yeah, I was definitely. I pretended like I knew, basically, that he had been a voiceover artist for 20 years when he told me that. I was like, yeah, I know. That's why we're here. So
And
it was a happy accident.
The fact that there's so many, I love Children's Hospital, and the fact that there's so many faces from that show, it seems like that has to be a really supportive show to work on.
Yeah, it's been now 5 years with Children's Hospital, second Emmy nomination, which is remarkable considering it started as a 5-minute web series, and now it's on Adult Swim, and it's doing great. And also the brainchild of it's from Rob Corddry's Demented Skull and Brain. And yeah, I mean, I basically wanted to surround myself with good old-fashioned, talented people that also had a great attitude and a good sense of humor on and off screen.
Yeah.
There were no divas on this set. It was very, the Children's Hospital family is very generous and supportive to each other. Everyone's sort of they're content creators.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about some of the research that you did into the world of voiceover.
Shockingly, I didn't do a lot of research because I was sort of, sounds dramatic, but I was living it because I was auditioning for voiceover roles and not getting them constantly. I got a sprinkling of a couple here and there, but otherwise I was not killing it in the voiceover industry. But that said, I feel like just even being in an audition room and seeing the people waiting to go in for voiceovers is a very, it's a very specific type of person who are the masters, and you definitely see them in the movie for sure.
Mm-hmm. And even though it's a comedy, do you have any intention of maybe bringing to light the sexism in the voiceover industry? Because it sounds like it's still pretty apparent.
Yeah, I mean, in the movie, it's not like a feminist. Well, it is a feminist comedy. Does that make sense? Feminist comedy. Let's go with that. But you won't notice, so you don't have to worry about it. It's not like annoying. I'm not gonna like hammer it home or anything, because I think the best messages are sort of, you don't notice them. They just it's sort of funny, and then oops, there's a message, But it's gonna be really spoon-fed. But there is a true problem, an underrepresentation of women as the omniscient voice of God that is never considered a woman. And apparently there was a study that said that men and women can register and hear a male authoritative voice, but that women and men, it was not equal if a woman's authoritative voice was speaking, that men would just tune out the woman's voice. And that's just natural and scientific. I was like, I call BS.
Yeah.
I call BS on that. I think a man wrote that study.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting conversation. I don't ever claim to be kind of, summa cum laude from Yale in women's studies. I'm just saying I am a woman, so therefore I am sort of, feminist.
And another theme of the movie is just the father-daughter relationship that you can see a little bit of, although it's a very competitive relationship in the film. Did you draw on any personal experience for that? Or
I mean, I'm not going to go to therapy in front of these people right now. But obviously when you write from what you know, and characters are usually an amalgamation of all people you've met in your life, or family members, or people you've been exposed to. But father-daughter competition seemed like an interesting and unique way to access a story. And I actually, there's this whole competitive nature in this world, very sort of machismo, egocentric kind of dudes slinging swords kind of thing. And And I actually took that from when I grew up around race car tracks. My dad is in race car driving, and he owns race car tracks, and I would go to the amateur racing events, and you'd see people kind of, sniffing each other's butts and kind of figuring out who's faster, And then my brother started racing, and it was interesting the dynamic between my dad and my brother kind of being competitive, it's just those kind of dynamics where I definitely used that, and so looked around and didn't see very many women, and I was like, okay, this is a similar conceit here than the voiceover industry. Obviously, race car driving is life and death, and voiceover industry is not. But to apply that gravitas to that industry, I thought might be fodder for comedy.
Yeah. And has your family seen the movie? What do they think of it?
Oh yeah, they don't notice any of the similarities that might reflect any sort of rapport that we have, or at least not the negative one.
Well, we have another clip. I don't know if you want to say anything.
Which one are we going to do?
About it. The smoothie clip.
Oh, okay, yes, we do. You're right. Let's do it.
And when you were making this, did you meet any voiceover people who are well known in the voiceover industry, or?
Yeah, in the movie, there's actually a fair representation of some of the real voiceover heavyweights, like Joe Cipriano and Mark Elliott. Guys who are working right now, Mark Grau, obviously Fred Melamed, who is one of the leads in the movie. But yeah, these guys, I wanted to cast as many real guys as possible. I would have had more if I could, but there's only so many minutes in a movie. You don't want to bore people. You got to get out of there. But yes, it was great meeting some of those gentlemen, and obviously Melissa Disney, who was initially in the movie, and in the DVD there will be a deleted scene with her because unfortunately we couldn't put it in. But she's amazing, actually amazing actress as well. So on camera.
The person who gets the most shout-outs, I think, is Don LaFontaine, who is repeatedly referred to as the master of voiceover. Were you a fan of his before? What do you think that he brought to movie trailers that makes people revere him so much?
So Don LaFontaine, if you guys don't know who he is, he's the guy who wrote the words "in a world" and also "in a world where." Those are the two phrases he owns. He has now passed away about 5 years ago, and really when he actually went into the voiceover industry because he was just a copywriter, and then he was thrown into the booth, because the guy didn't show up for whatever reason. So he ended up going in there, laid out the track, and forever trailers were changed because his voice was remarkable. And yeah, I mean, I think this is very much a love letter to him in so many ways, and his family have been very generous in their support for the movie, so I'm honored for that. But yes, he is painted as a genius in the movie because he is a bona fide legend.
And I wonder if you're going to get any voiceover opportunities after.
I mean, I sure as hell hope so.
Yeah.
At this point, I mean,
is it still a dream that you have?
Yes. Absolutely. I cannot wait. I mean, I love the idea of the blind voice, the idea that you can be anyone in voiceover. You're not judged by what you look like or whatever that. I mean, you can really be any social niveau, any nationality, any gender for that matter. In the movie I play, like Ken Marino is constantly on speakerphone with his like big fat old Jewish agent guy who's got an awesome voice. It's me, okay? And I would not traditionally get cast as a Jewish man of an older age, nor a man in general. So the point is, you have a lot of freedom to be anyone, and that's cool, especially for an actor. It's like the ultimate acting.
Now, since this is your first major film that you've directed, what did you learn about filmmaking, directing, that you didn't know when you were acting in them?
I mean, to be honest, I eased into it because I did some short form stuff first. Like I did a short film called Worst Enemy that I wrote and directed that went to Sundance in 2011. And then I directed a couple children's hospitals. I don't know if anyone watches that here. And
I think a lot of people probably watch it.
All right.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't sure. That's cool.
Or at least
like
DVR it because it comes on.
Obviously. No. I mean, these are you're not barbarians. Obviously, you don't stay up that late. So I did have opportunities to be behind the camera and not be an actor. So when I got behind the camera for the first day of saying action, for In a World, I had done so much legwork, and I had a year of preparation. Just lots of notebooks, lots of lists, really obsessive about what kind of pens to use. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get really organizationally crazy. So yeah, I felt good when I got there. But the biggest surprise was probably post-production. I had never sort of existed. I did not understand the importance and the nuanced nature of it until you're in it. I understand conceptually, but you don't know until you're there that it's going to be almost a year of your life, in a dark room, lonely, with the editor, who's a great guy, but like enough already. You know what I mean?
And from
7
the
months.
beginning, did you always want to direct it? And were you planning from the beginning, okay, I'm going to write this and star in it, and I'm going to direct it?
No, not initially. Initially, I was shopping for a director. I wanted to always direct eventually, but then it starts to become like, when is that time going to be? And it was my agent, Billy Lazarus, who said, I think you need to direct this. This is obviously something that you're going to, like, we can't find a director who's going to know what you want. So that's actually what prodded me to then do Worst Enemy, just so that I could like cut my teeth on something.
And that was a Kickstarter, was it?
I self-financed it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then for post-production, I did do Kickstarter. Kickstarter had just come out. It was super jazzy, super cool. I did a Kickstarter for post-production. That was it. It was cool.
Oh, that's great.
But I self-financed the first, like, the production, which in hindsight, I was like, God, this Kickstarter thing's really cool. I could have done it, but it's I don't know. I felt like, what do you make money for? I think if I'm going to invest in anything, I'll invest into myself.
And do you have plans? Are you working on another screenplay? Is this like something you want to continue?
Yeah, I'm knee deep in my second feature, so in the writing process, which is lonely.
Can you tell
Very
us
lonely.
anything?
I
Any
can't.
keywords?
No, because it's embryonic. It's it's still forming. It's still trying to find its way. I don't want to scare it.
And is that also a film that you think that you might want to direct as well?
Oh yeah, no, I'm directing. Yeah, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. Yeah, for sure. But I'll be acting in other things too.
Yeah.
And I mean that because I feel at home. I feel happy. In this position, and I love filmmaking as an athletic sport. I like the team aspect, assembling good folks, getting together, checking in on people, making sure, got good, comfortable shoes. All right, let's go and do this, and that's what I like. That's why I want to do it for the rest of my life.
That's great. Well, why don't we open up to these folks? If you have any questions, raise your hand and somebody will come to you with a microphone.
Yes, firstly, I want to congratulate you on directing your first feature. That's great. You've had a wonderful career, and I noticed recently you've talked about your fascination with the sound of the human voice and accents. Now, could you consider doing more accents in your own acting roles? Maybe I could see you being the next Meryl Streep in that respect.
Very kind, sir. I will pay you that $50 after. No, I love accents. I've tried to do it a little bit in my sort of short career, because in a way it's a long haul, so I can consider it a short career. But yeah, I really do like doing accents as in film roles, for sure. It gives me something to investigate and to unpack and figure out, because obviously you learn accents, if you start to really collect them, you learn them phonetically, and you want to get scientific about them and figure out where they're placed in the mouth and where they placed with your breath and how they make you move, and So yeah, I'm excited to take on those types of roles, for sure.
Thank you. What kind of challenges did you face directing yourself?
It's a great question. There's a myriad of challenges, obviously, because you don't want to squander that performance, especially if it's the protagonist, because regardless if it's me or not, it's like I'm going to do the film a disservice if I let that performance glide by and falter. So I had a couple of sort of preemptive strikes that I took on, which was, first, I worked with an acting coach, a sort of like fancy acting coach that I couldn't afford to have during the whole production, but I did for 2 weeks intensive before we started shooting, just during hard prep. on the movie, I worked really hard with her as if somebody else wrote the script, and those hours that I spent with her were just, I wasn't a writer or a director, I just was an actor. And then I brought an acting buddy with me, which was an aspiring filmmaker, my friend Janixa Bravo, to be in on those meetings so that I could then ask her, she sort of sponged all the information I did, and I'd be like, remember to sit, if I need to talk to you about this thing that she just said, that was good, remember that. So I had her as like my teammate, and then I hired a stand-in, but I had the stand-ins actually audition for the role of Carol, so that I could pick someone who was professional, who could take on somewhat my mannerisms, and I would put her in every scene while I set up the shot and picked the lens and reframed and did the 1,000 other things that you would do as a director. And then I would place myself in right at the last minute.
Just a quick question. In the 2 years that you were writing the screenplay for In a World, how many periods of writer's block did you have? And what did you sort of do to move past them? I mean, did you have a routine or was it sort of random in a way?
I do something that's, I have other friends who do this, but I have a system that has sort of kept me away from writer's block, which is basically setting up self-induced writer's retreats where you're not allowed to think or do any writing at all until you arrive at those writer's retreats within your own home or apartment or whatever. So I would just I make my whole house, I would put 2 or 3 days, maybe 4 days aside, right? And I know that they're coming up on the calendar, and I see them coming. And then I would stock my whole house with all the good snacks, you know what I mean? Like the healthy good stuff, the great drinks, you know what I'm saying? And then all the healthy stuff. And then I clean the house, and everything's perfect for when I wake up on that day that I have allocated as the first day of the writer's retreat. There's no phones. There's no let me just check this app. No. It's super strict. And I show up for work in that I wear sneakers, I wear a comfortable outfit, I don't wear my pajamas, barefoot. That's not how I can write, Because that, I think, prods writer's block. So if you have a moment of arrival, because half the battle is just arriving, when you're writing. And that has been very effective for me, because somehow your body clock, your mental clock, whatever it is, it really does sort of arrive on that day. It's like waking up before the alarm goes off, You know that you're gonna get there. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Kind of dovetailing on that, how do you know when you're done, right? Since you're creating the thing, you've got the ball in motion, how do you know when you just pull back and say, it's finished?
I mean, it's a freaking great question, because it's such a hard thing, especially in a creative medium of any sort, even with editorial and whatnot. But with the script, I really felt, I lent on the generous time of friends who I admire. And I think it's really important, when you're a writer, to have other friends who are writers, and then have other friends that are not writers, that are just smart individuals that you trust their opinion. And it's the combination of those notes that really help you arrive at a place that you feel comfortable with. And it is somewhat instinctual, because you do kind of have to make the call eventually. And so it's a bold thing, but making movies involves, it's not like curing cancer or anything, but you do have to make bold choices occasionally, creatively. And the hardest ones are always saying, I'm ready, it's done, But pretty much, I feel like you don't want to over-edit yourself, but then you do have to kind of start to trust the feedback you're getting.
You went to England to study, and the way they phrase words or accents, I feel like play in with the phrasing of words.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how much does that really, have you ever tried doing American slang with an awkward Russian accent, or does that not really work? Or
it works, but certainly when you're writing, you're writing the voice of a character that is not dissimilar to writing for an accent, a character with an accent. Musicality plays a lot of many parts in the things that in the dialogue that I write, because especially because I was in England, and I really do appreciate the musicality of an accent, and also an attitude, even accents within our country offer different ways of phrasing, obviously, and different cadence, and it really helps me to write with that in mind, and it helps being an actor, frankly, because I basically improvise with myself, and it gets very schizo in my house sometimes, because I play all the parts, and my dog just sort of looks at me and then like walks out of the room sad. It's like, what happened to my life? So.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks to you guys. And In a World comes out tomorrow.
Yes.